In both Japan and China, there is a shared educational philosophy that places rote learning at the centre of their individual educational frameworks. From this favourable view of rote learning has come the East Asian Cram School. Each country has their own implementation of these schools. Both, however, exist with the core intent of cramming as much learning into the day through mass rote learning as possible. In recent years, many practitioners from across the globe have begun to look towards these strategies with a critical perspective. Some look on them favourably with the intent to incorporate them into their own learning strategies, whilst others believe these East Asian systems are archaic and in need of reform. In order to really assess these rote learning focused systems, the impact upon the student must be placed at the foreground. Before we go into the specifics of the Chinese and Japanese systems, it is important that we gain a perspective on the critical thoughts surrounding the educational debate that is rote learning. The main arguments in favour of rote learning come from its ability to improve academic aptitude. A study was published in the Pakistan Armed Forces Medical Journal in 2015 in order to analyse the effect of extensive rote learning on academic achievement. The team behind the research concluded that prior training of rote learning may provide experience to learn and reproduce bigger chunks of knowledge more effectively. The evidence for rote learning's ability to improve academic achievement in East Asia is hard to argue against, with Japan and China both appearing in the top 10 countries in the 2015 PISA rankings in both science and mathematics. This is the ultimate failing of rote learning, however. It can be argued that there is too much of a focus on test scores in academia and not enough room made for creative attributes and quality of life education to improve student well-being. On the global scale, a 2011 perception survey found that almost 70% of head teachers in India viewed rote teaching methods as stifling to creative thinking skills and responsible for lower standards of learning. This calls into question the effectiveness of each educational framework's ability to appropriately accommodate for creativity. Both systems have long upheld traditions influenced by the teachings of the ancient Chinese philosopher Confucius. The associated philosophy of Confucianism places knowledge in high regard. In Confucius' own words, those who wanted to control their own hearts first sought to purify their motives. Those who wanted to purify their motives first sought to extend their knowledge. The Confucian focus on knowledge shared by both countries is apparent, but what about their individual approaches to creativity? A 2012 study called into question the potential developmental slump in creativity in China's education system. It was concluded that the current testing system should be altered and that creativity-centred values, or more to the point, a creativity-centred testing system, should be developed. When we consider rote learning's effect on creativity, we can see how it could be to blame for this creative slump. In terms of creativity in the Japanese culture, outward perceptions seem to place Japan in a much more creative position. In a global study in which 5,000 adults from the UK, France, Germany, the US and Japan were interviewed, Japan was perceived as the most creative country. Japanese citizens, however, viewed themselves far less creatively on the global scale. Whilst outward perceptions are one thing, the actual creative effectiveness is still up for debate. According to a 2008 cross-cultural study on creativity in Japanese classrooms, teachers tended to view creative students as more disruptive. There is more of an educational philosophy to educate as efficiently as possible, which discourages an environment that promotes questioning and curiosity. This is in line with rote teaching methods. However, the outward perception of Japanese creativity in contrast to the Chinese does call into question whether it is the teaching methods or the wider culture that are to blame. To elaborate, the prime example of rote learning methods and memorization in these educational climates must be examined, and so we turn to the cram school. The main aim of cram schooling in China is to appropriately educate their students with the knowledge needed to pass the Gaokao test. This test takes place in June of every year, with more than 9 million students participating, and is the only requirement for admission into Chinese universities. The schools themselves have been described as schooling by many, but for those in rural areas they often offer a chance at a more economically viable lifestyle beyond their own. The town of Maotanchang is largely deserted throughout the summer months, but for the rest of the year it houses more than 50,000 Chinese students, many of whom are hoping to take the Gaokao. The town has become a factory-like system, failing to accommodate for much student individuality. Study hours are between 10 past 6 in the morning and 10 to 11 at night, with a total of 2 hours breaks spread throughout the day. Pressure on students is high, with one student from a rural background commenting that, "My mother constantly reminds me that I have to study hard, because my father is out working construction far from home to pay my school fees." The results are hard to deny, however, with 80% of students acquiring a passing grade on the Gaokao. One former student of Maotangchang put this pass rate into a sobering perspective, saying that you only see the high passage rate, but you don't see how much scolding and physical punishment there is from teachers, or how many students commit suicide under pressure. Student suicide in China has been linked to exam pressure on multiple occasions. It was found in 2014 by an independent Chinese educational organisation that 92% of investigated student suicides in Beijing in 2013 were linked to poor relationships with teachers or exam pressure. Clearly, the rote learning implemented in Chinese schools is having a negative impact on student well-being, no matter how high the pass rates are. However, student suicides are not exclusive to Chinese cram schooling. In Japan, there is an observable spike in youth suicide on the first day back at school every year. A 2015 government white paper that examined 40 years' worth of data found almost a 30% increase in suicides on the 1st of September over the second highest point in the year. This has even triggered a social media campaign for suicide prevention with this hashtag, which translates to "on the evening of the 31st. Whilst China's cram system mainly focuses on the Gaokao, cram schooling in Japan is more of a consistent supplement to public schooling. One Japanese student currently studying in the UK said that cram schooling was commonplace in their primary school, where students would head straight to their cram school once their main school day was over, returning home between 9 and 10 PM. They also noted that stress levels were high due to the inclusion of homework on top of this. Academic achievement is always top priority, but one parent stated that there was a better learning environment outside of public schooling, saying that teachers take really good care of the students, so there is more chance for academic achievement. The perception that the public schooling system is inadequate appears to be a large contributor to the apparent necessity for cram schooling in Japan, in spite of the increased student pressure. This has not gone unnoticed by those at the head of cram schooling institutes, the biggest of which is Kumon. The Kumon system has turned cram schooling into a business, elevating tutors to a celebrity-like status. The institute has grown to 4 million students, all of whom contribute to the £68 billion industry that Japanese cram schooling has become. Whilst results are indeed achieved, student well-being is again left behind by the desire to profit. This cram schooling system is no longer just a part of the Asian educational framework, but has spread to systems across the world. The Kumon Institute itself has gone worldwide, with schools in North America, Europe and Africa, along with its home continent. The New York Times reported in 2013 that the South Korean cram schooling company iLevel had become a success in New York alongside the Japanese-style Kumon schools. In an email to parents, one member of iLevel criticised their Japanese competitors, saying that Kumon requires too much rote memorization and not enough critical thinking. The globalised methodology incorporated into these cram schools seems to allow for more creative teaching strategies than their Asian counterparts. Globalised education certainly seems to appeal to prospective Chinese university students, with almost 4 times as many choosing to enrol in universities in Australia, Britain and the US over the last 13 years. However, the influence of global rankings has led many politicians to consider Asian strategies in recent years. In an article he wrote in the Daily Telegraph, former Secretary of State for Education Michael Gove said that schools in the Far East are turning out students who are working in an altogether higher level than our own. Going on, he cited the PISA tables as evidence, stating that places like Shanghai and Singapore put us to shame. As we've already touched upon, however, the PISA tables focus largely upon academic achievement, failing to give an overall picture on how well an education system equips students for wider life. To conclude, in both Japan and China, an observable preference for rote learning can be seen. Whilst their specific approaches may differ, overall there are many similarities. The academic success attained through these methods is undeniable thanks to the high passing rates of cram school towns like Maotangchang and the large Asian presence in the PISA tables. However, the cost this success comes at is high, with youth suicide rates in both Japan and China being linked to student stress. As Asian academics become aware of this potential damage, Western society appears all too ready to embrace it, in large part due to the sway of international league tables. The financial game of private cram schooling is also a large motivator to Western investors. If this continues to happen, this style of education will not only be damaging to Asian students, but also potentially to their worldwide counterparts.